Andrew Cox is the director of the Space Warfighting Analysis Center, or SWAC, within the U.S. Space Force. The SWAC's mandate is to develop force designs for U.S. Space Force mission areas through a rigorous analytical process. Mr. Cox also is the director of the Joint Department of Defense Intelligence Community Space Security and Defense Program, or SSDP. Andrew has graciously appeared in several prior classified Moorman Center spacetime interviews and other NSSA events. And we very much look forward to having you again, Andrew, in the coming weeks. Now on to the primary subject of our conversation today. On October 27th, the Space Warfighting Analysis Center will hold a classified business fair in Chantilly, Virginia. The purpose of this important event is to provide industry partners with insight and rationale for the force design processes and model-based system engineering, or MBSE, being employed in the context of missile warning and missile tracking mission areas. We have listed the email address for registering for the SWAC Business Fair on the screen, so please make use of that. This promises to be a highly informative event, and we strongly encourage all interested parties to sign up as soon as possible because seating is limited. Thanks again, Andrew, for being with us today and for your dedicated service to the nation. Let me now turn the microphone over to you for any comments you'd like to make.
Thank you, Chris. And I want to thank the NSSA for all they're doing to help me with outreach. Certainly in my past job as the director of SSDP, we really didn't interact with industry, and certainly as we stand up to SWAC, demands that we take a much more proactive role, which I couldn't do without associations like yours, so thank you very much. For those of you that are online and may have heard about the SWAC or haven't heard about the SWAC at all, just a few quick words about who we are and what we do. I think Chris gave a pretty good intro of our mission. How we execute that mission is that we are doing our very best to do a much more detailed analysis of the various mission areas that are of concern to the Space Force in terms of what's the threat, what is the new mission area that we want to embrace, and how do we build systems in space that can not only conduct those existing and new missions, but can do so in a contested environment. So we want to do that by being as diligent as we can as getting as much detailed information about the threat, as much detailed information we can about the mission itself, and build higher fidelity assessments of what those future architectures could be by not only having that detailed information about the threat, but also the physical and engineering constraints associated with the mission itself, to include cost, to understand whether or not we're going to have a future architectural target that's even affordable, and try to do that much earlier than we're used to doing, at least in the DoD world, so that when we put forward a potential set of requirements to the Space Force staff that they would go and validate with the joint staff, that when they put those requirements together, or when they put those budgets together, well before we initiate a new program, that we have confidence that those requirements and budgets are realistic, that the budgets themselves are affordable, and that what we're asking for is resilient and secure. And the only way I know how to do that, building off of what we've done in SSDP in the past, is just to build the best fidelity models we can muster, and do so in ways that are highly efficient, meaning I want to build models that are following open standards that other people can use and read, because I believe if we do this right, we will stand at the headwaters of the digital engineering revolution that I think the Space Force is trying to put in place. So that's really what we're about. And this business fair that we're going to conduct on the 27th is really our first attempt to try to involve industry in that process way up front. I think most industry partners are used to seeing RFPs hit the street, where those RFPs have already sort of defined the box inside which you are expected to innovate. And I know that many in industry have complained about that and want to get further upstream in the idea process. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get you involved in what are the challenges we face and get you a chance to see those in detail, as well as to see how we think about tackling those problems, so that if there's a better way to skin that cat, that you're able to give that to us and we can use that information to inform those budgets and those programs. Over to you, Chris.
Well, that's outstanding. Thank you for the background information, Andrew. And let me ask you a few questions first about the upcoming fair, and then we do have some questions coming in from the audience as well. I should say we're happy to field questions from the audience. So if you are interested in submitting a question for Andrew, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So Andrew, can you tell us a little bit more about the SWAC's ongoing work in force design for missile warning and missile tracking mission areas? And you know, what can you preview in that regard in an unclassified fashion? I know much of it is classified, but is there anything more you can say in an unclassified basis about the particular work on force design for missile warning and missile tracking in this case?
I can. I think the best way to say that is we know that the current missile warning architecture was built to help our nation detect, track, and predict the destination of certain kinds of strategic threats to our nation. And it does a very good job of conducting that mission. But two things have changed since, you know, the basic architecture we have up there today. The first is that the terrestrial-based threats have changed. You know, we've seen China launch several hypersonic glide vehicles and test them. And we're seeing a growth of all kinds of different weapon types. And that's putting stresses on the system. And we need to be steely-eyed about where those threats are going and think through how do we anticipate the evolution of those threats as they get more modern, and how do we make sure that we can still protect the nation with those capabilities. The second thing that's changing is obviously the threat in the domain. We're seeing our adversaries field both ground-based and space-based counter-space weapons, and we need to be prepared for those. And we ought to be looking at both of those problem sets as new challenges for the new architecture. And that's really what the demand signal for us to try to tackle this missile warning architecture to start. It honestly was not my preference because it is such a big problem set, but the demand signal was so great that General Raymond essentially gave us no choice but to tackle that mission. We've been at it for over a year now, and I can honestly say we would not be where we are now without the strong partnerships we've gotten from SMC, the Missile Defense Agency, the Space Development Agency, and other acquisition organizations. I will say that the level of partnership we have across the space community on this particular subject is one that I have not seen in a long time. And so I'm very pleased with the partnerships and the support we've gotten from the entire space community.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you a little bit more about sort of the admin side of the upcoming business fair, if you don't mind. Is this a hybrid event that is both in person as well, virtual and online? And which companies do you believe should plan to participate in this event? Which companies are you looking for? What kind of companies? Big, small, in between, traditional, non-traditional, commercial, et cetera. Tell us a little bit more about who you'd like to see participating in the upcoming business fair.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, We're doing both online, or both in person and online. We wanted to reach out to a large segment of industry, but due to COVID restrictions, there's only so many folks that we can stick in any room at one time. We're going to have two in-person locations. We're going to have one at the aerospace location in Chantilly, and then we're going to have another in-person location via VTC into that location from the aerospace building here in Colorado Springs. So thanks to Aerospace for providing the facilities for this first activity. Beyond that, we are going to do a classified phone and IC connectability to dial in for those that sign in. I encourage everyone to go to the FedBizOps or the SAM site that Chris mentioned, because the deadline to sign up is the 12th of October. So if you haven't signed up by then, we won't be able to give you a seat in the room or a port on the voice bridge to participate. But that's the best we can do, during the COVID restrictions. Within the next week, if you've already signed up, you're going to get an email directly from us that goes through the directions, where to go, how to get there. The COVID restrictions, you'll have to provide proof of vaccination. We'll send you the security information. This industry exchange will happen at the SCI level. The reason for that is it is very difficult for us to talk about the future architectural approaches and not do it at the SCI level. So it'll be only SCI folks cleared. There'll be other information on there like the agenda, the meals, teleconference data, what to dial. But I just encourage you to go to that SAM site and register by the 12th. We're also going to send out prior to the meeting some of the modeling style guides, so that corporations can hand that to their resident techie and have them look at it and read it and perhaps prepare you for some of the material we are going to deliver. So who do we want to be there? First, we'll talk about companies. Obviously, our preference is that the companies that are that come to this first business fair are folks that are very interested at first in the mission area, right? So if you're a company that either builds satellites, buses, payloads that have some relationship to the missile warning, missile tracking kinds of mission areas, I think this is really targeted towards you. We want to see a mixture of big and small. We also want to see a mixture of, I'll call it, existing defense contractors as well as new space contractors. I would say that so far we've seen about 110 different companies register, and I've seen a very nice mix of sort of, I'll call it, new space companies as well as names that most folks would instantly recognize. So I'm pleased with that, but we want to see a large distribution of both big and small as well as old and new come into this forum. Now, who from those companies would we like to see? So I think we're looking for a bit of an odd mix. I think we're allowing each company to bring two folks. I know that the temptation oftentimes is to send a business development person, and that's okay. But just know that I think what we would like to see is some senior leadership from these corporations. I know General Raymond will be there at our Force Design conference, or I'm sorry, at our business fair for at least the first hour to give you his strategic perspective. And I think he would like to see similarly strategic-minded folks from these companies, because we're going to be talking about what does this industry action need to look like? How do we engage with industry long before we have a requirement, long before we have a program put in place, in order to help not only us be more informed, but allow the industry to be more informed, so you don't guess about what we're thinking about anymore, right? Inform your strategies, inform your investment portfolios. I think that is the kind of conversation we hope to have. I think we would also like to have people there that are technically sound in the particular mission area. So your system engineers, your senior technical leads from your corporations, because we are going to geek out a little bit and show you some of these detailed models that we've been working on in this particular area. And I think it would be good to have folks there that can appreciate the level of information we plan to exchange.
That's very informative, Andrew. Thank you. I have a question for you from a member of the audience. The question is, will you be developing your own threat models or taking those from the intelligence community, for example, from NASIC or STAC or MISIC or others? And recognizing we're on an unclassified line, so if you'd like to field that one, please be my guest.
That's a great question. So first off, let me start by saying the people that are going to participate in this this fair are going to probably get the largest trove of threat models that's ever been released ever. I have never seen an instance where we've put this level of work into detailed threat models that that industry will now have in their hands to help them understand what kind of threats and targets we need to worry about for our foreseeable future. We could not have done that on our own. So all of our models are based on validated threat data that we get from MISIC, NASIC, WinPack, et cetera. So all of our models have traceability back to validated threat assessments by those organizations. In some cases, our models are actually start off with those models built by those organizations. However, some of those models often stop where the intelligence record ends, and we have to fill in the holes with good engineering judgment. So we'll have a robust conversation about this at the business fair, but we'll talk about where do these models depart the record, and where we're having to fill in the puzzle pieces with sound engineering judgment. So we'll go into that in detail in the business fair. All of these models are sourced to that. I will tell you that one of our challenges in building these models is that a lot of folks build models that are tailored to their own specific simulation tools they like to use. You know, it could be AFSIM, it could be STK, it could be a broad array of software tools people like to use to run their simulations. We essentially had to go back and rebuild all of our models to open standards like SysML, so that we weren't dictating which simulation tools industry needed to do to understand what we were trying to say. So you will find that this entire trove of threat models we're giving you are all based on open standards, and we're even giving you the code to translate those models into whatever MATLAB code or C++ or Python, so that you can integrate it into whatever modeling tool or simulation tool you want to use. So that is a uniquely SWAC product that is based on intelligence data. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and that in and of itself ought to be a reason for a lot of companies to want to join, listen in on the fair or be there in person. I have another question from the audience. It is, are you going to discuss potential contractual support vehicles at the business fair, or are you looking at leveraging existing contract vehicles, for example, those that support SSDP or other legacy activities? Will you get into that level of detail on possible contracting mechanisms?
We will not. And the reason for that is just this is my first rodeo, and I have not had a chance to figure out how to set those structures up to enable a broad competitive landscape and allow industry to provide their best ideas through some kind of structured contract vehicle. I have full intent to get there. but I'm just not smart enough yet to know how to do that and do it right. A lot of other organizations do it very well. DARPA does it well. There's lots of other organizations that know how to do this. My hope is to copy them and pick the best of all the worlds out there. I would just say that I'm just not there yet, and I didn't want to wait to figure all that out before I at least did a transmit to industry. So the way this is going to work is I am going to provide you with like I said, a giant suitcase of threat models, of models of the target, as well as models of the candidate architectures that we felt detected those targets and operated through those threats, with no expectation of reply. If any of the folks participating in this fair want to provide an unsolicited reply, like a white paper or something like that, certainly open to any of those unsolicited replies, just as a way for us to begin the information exchange. I would like to mature over time to make that next step a little bit more formal and know exactly what's going to look like in advance of the next business fair. But at this point, I'm looking at this more as an opportunity for me to share, and for you, if you choose to, share back.
That's great. Thank you. I have one other question from the audience, and then want to give you, then I have a question for you, look into the future and give you a chance to kind of quickly sum up, Andrew, since we're rapidly approaching the 4 o'clock hour here. Question from the audience is, can you please discuss the information technology infrastructure in place and/or desire to support SWAC's stand-up and responsibilities with respect to the Space Force's digital service vision? You know, how do you blend that together, your IT backbone, if you will, with the very bold vision for the Space Force being the first truly digital service from birth?
I have already begun heading down this path. It started off with SSDP, and we've transitioned it over to the SWAC, where we have a very robust analytical network that is where we've implemented our own cloud solution that allows us to operate at multiple different classification levels, that I can tunnel over multiple different networks, and that allows us as an analytical community to work across our nation. And on those networks, we have hundreds of different modeling and simulation tools that we make available to our analytical community. So I'm already heading down that path. I believe that because of my small size, I'm able to move quickly and to build that digital environment probably faster than anybody. My intention is that SSC's efforts to build that digital ecosystem will at some point completely outstrip me, and that I will hop on that infrastructure as soon as it becomes available. But I don't have the liberty of waiting for that to occur in order to get my job done. So I'm fully expecting SSC to catch me and pass me, and I'll jump on that train as it goes through the station. So I hope that answers the question.
That's great. One more sort of admin related aspect. There are a number of audience questions that are driving at the question of how many participants can join in on online versus in person. Are there limitations on the number of folks that could be in a skiff and listen in, or recognize the 2-person per company limit? How does that work in practice, Andrew?
Yeah, so I think if we're going to allow 2 folks per company, in terms of the 2 in-person locations, both here in Colorado Springs and in Washington, I think we can support roughly 140-ish people to be in person at those 2 locations. The amount of people that can participate via classified phone and IC Connect is only limited by the sign-in date. if you go on the website and sign in after October 12th, I cannot guarantee that we will give you a port on the voice bridge. But there is no limit to folks who sign up to getting virtual access to the business fair.
That's great. Makes sense. And that'll certainly get to a wide group of people who can't go in person online, so through IC Connect. So that's great. So everybody online listening in, beat that date of October 12th. Last couple of quick questions for you, Andrew. Are you looking to possibly have additional business fairs on other topics in the coming months? Obviously you're spending an enormous amount of time and energy now on missile warning, missile tracking mission areas, but what about some of the other mission areas?
Yeah, so God willing, the creek don't rise. The answer to that is yes. I think our biggest challenge right now is just budgetary, to be honest with you, right? We've got a continuing resolution that was signed, which is great. But a lot of these growth into these new areas, I guess you could classify some of them as a new start. And so our ability to expand beyond this mission area is somewhat fixed until we get a full budget. I will tell you that our top 3 priorities for the next set of force designs are going beyond missile warning and missile tracking to go into what we call fire control. I can explain a little bit more about that at the business fair. It's a little hard to do it on this line. The next big area that we want to look at, and this one I'll have a hard time doing without a signed budget, is space data transport. As many of you probably know, the Space Force was designated the Joint Requirements Lead for space space data transport. And given that responsibility, the SWAC has been asked to try to put together the force design related to that area. So again, this will require a tremendous amount of partnership for us to work with SMC, work with Derek Tournier and his SDA team to try to define what does that end state space data transport architecture need to look like for the Space Force. And then the third one that we're looking at that we've started this year in support of the analysis of alternatives is tactical ISR. So think ISR in support of time-sensitive targeting. That AOA started earlier this year at the direction of OMB, and we will continue to work that through the next fiscal year. So I anticipate that at least 2 of those 3, even if there is not a budget signed, we'll probably have another business fair on those subjects. And then if we get a budget signed within the first quarter or so, we'll start tackling space data transport as well. Obviously, as we move further, we'll extend into things like PNT, command and control. We're just going to keep working our way through the space mission areas. I think our goal will be to do a good job in each mission area before we move on to the next one, instead of trying to tackle all the mission areas and doing a lower fidelity response.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Any last quick comments?
No, just I want to thank you again. I think my goals of this business fair is to, again, I want to be in a sharing mode. I'm going to share with you models of the threats, the targets, as well as our blue design, with the intent of giving industry clear insights into what we're thinking, right? Inform your strategies for, how you want to posture your company, where you may want to make some your own investments, and then provide you an opportunity to give unsolicited feedback. This is our first time doing this. I expect that we'll get some skinned elbows and some bruised knees, and I want to hear from industry what we could do better, because I'm not sure that this has been done before, and if it has, it certainly hasn't been done on a broad level in the space community. So my feelings won't be hurt if you've got a lot of feedback for me on how to do this better.
Well, maybe the National Security Space Association can help gather up some of that feedback for you and share that with you, Andrew. We'll look forward to doing that and talking with you further about it. Well, our time has expired. Thanks again to Mr. Andrew Cox and to our audience. I hope to see you at the SWAC Business Fair coming up on the 27th. With that, everybody have a wonderful weekend and please stay safe. Andrew, thanks again for your time.
Well, thank you.